Hi everyone, today we're going to look at a transitional CO2 system, and that's a total CO2 system from one end to the other that doesn't have any kind of refrigerant like 449 or 448 that's going to cool the CO2 for us. This does it all itself. We have some gas coolers outside that helps get rid of some of the heat, and then we'll go inside, take a look at all these components. It's pretty interesting, pretty neat. I hope you really enjoy it. So first we'll start off with this gas cooler that helps us get rid of the heat. Excuse me for holding the mic close, but it's real windy, so I'm trying to knock some of that wind noise out. But this is a basic gas cooler. It's made by BAC. You can see it says condenser on there. It depends on what time of year it is, if we're going to use it as a condenser or as a gas cooler. It pretty much does what it says. It's going to cool that CO2 gas that's coming into the unit. We have the controls in here that we can take a look at a later date, and then all your electronics. But basically all it does is we'll run water over our pads here, and as water's running down, the fans on top are pulling that air in and help cooling the CO2 gas off when it comes into there. Sometimes when it's nice and hot outside, we're really not condensing any of the CO2. We're just removing all that extra heat so that we can go into our valve, which we'll show you later, and what it does and how it works to actually get us some liquid CO2. There's a pump on the inside. I don't know if you want to take a look, but all it does is pump water down the pads, and then the pads help cool off the CO2. So on this side, this is where the CO2 refrigerant is entering the gas cooler and exiting. At the top is where we're coming in at, and it's probably it's not so warm today because we're like 55 degrees outside, but we have vapor going in at the top, and this is high pressure vapor. Today it's probably only around 850, 900 pounds. On a really hot summer day, we can be up to 1200 plus pounds of pressure. And if you notice, these valves have like the stainless steel caps on. Dealing with 1200 pounds of pressure, you really don't want that thing to go off on you. These are ball valves, don't have ports on them because we don't want anybody to accidentally stick something on there and then blow 1200 pounds on them. That would really hurt. You got to take that cap off.
All right, so in this particular store with this setup, we have 3 racks, 1, 2, and 3. They all do the same thing, so we're just going to explore one of them. But this particular floor plan, they've divided the store up in thirds so that if I lose a rack, I'm not losing the whole store. This is an Advancer Hill Phoenix rack. It's a booster system. By what we mean by that, we have a low temp feeding into medium temp. So of course, these are the compressors. This is going to be our low temp compressor. Those two are medium temp compressors. On a low temp compressor, our suction pressure is roughly 200 to 250 pounds, and our discharge pressure roughly 550. So what we can actually do is we'll actually discharge this discharge pressure into the suction of those, because the suction pressure on those is about 800 pounds. So it's a little bit higher pressure, so we can discharge into it. Now the discharge coming off of that, if you saw our gas coolers outside earlier, those compressors are what discharge the gas to the outside. Of course, we have all these fancy bells and whistles that it has to go through first. You notice one of the first things it goes through is this oil separator. Look at the bolts. There's a lot of bolts on top of that, isn't there? But there can be 12 to 1300 pounds of pressure, so we got to have something pretty stable on that. So it's going to go to our oil separator before it goes outside to the condensers. And then on some instances, some stores and stuff, we do have heat reclaim valves. We want to circulate that. Go into these special heat exchangers. These heat exchangers are designed to hold the pressure coming off the discharge for that. But they work really well. Get a lot of heat recovery from those. We do have a bunch of labels on here. We have labels here for what everything is. That way when a technician comes here and they're trying to figure stuff out, they can see what our receiver pressure is. Now our receiver is this big tank here. In a CO2 transitional system, we like to refer to as a flash tank. It does hold liquid, but the reason we call it a flash tank is we have certain valves where the discharge gas coming out of the condenser will go into a special valve, and that valve acts kind of like the opposite of an expansion valve. It's actually going to drop the pressure and create liquid CO2, and it's going to drop down into the tank. So it kind of flashes off in there. So we'll have CO2 liquid and vapor going at the same time. Of course, the vapor will stay at the top, the liquid go down to the bottom, and then the liquid gets circulated through the store. These are our relief valves. You can see all the different relief valves for the area because there's a lot of high pressure. We got to protect the system, and if our pressure gets too high, these things will help relieve it, and they're going to get piped to a common header to go to the outside so that it doesn't suffocate a technician standing in the motor room. Different points of it are different higher. Like this one's going to relieve like 1500 psi, I believe. Which brings me to another point. When you're dealing with CO2, a lot of this stuff is marked in bar. So you have to, you'll see it like this one here, you'll see a 45 bar and a 60 bar. Basically 14.5 times whatever number that is gets you your pressure PSI. But a lot of this stuff was invented overseas, and bar is a big thing that they use over there. As we mentioned before, our low temp compressor and our medium temp compressors, they discharge into the oil separator. Of course, the oil separator takes that oil, separates it from the CO2 refrigerant, and puts the excess oil into a component in the very back, which is our oil reservoir. Now, because of the high pressure, all this has electronic valves that open and close when these things fill up. So if we can come around here, I can kind of show you a little bit better. So you see, we have these sensors here that monitor how much oil is in the system. And then when oil fills up, this oil valve right here will energize, that one right there, it'll energize and take oil out of the separator and put it into the receiver. And then of course the receiver has a pipe that comes in and feeds back to the compressor, so it's an endless cycle. Very important part of the system. If we don't have proper oil for our compressors, we're not gonna work properly, and it's gonna lock up. And of course we have these high dollar oil level sensors on there. They're all electronic also. They read how much oil comes in. It's made by Curon. If you notice these funny devices here, those are going to be our high pressure check valve switches. So if this thing gets too much pressure, I think these are set for 2100, they'll pop off and relieve. So you don't want to be standing anywhere around that when that happens. They do have high pressure switches in case it gets above 1500 pounds, they will turn off. That's our high pressure switch for our low temp. We have all these fancy CO2 detectors. That way, if something blows off, it's going to alarm out and let us know we have a catastrophic leak going on. That's our Danfoss leak detector. It's also connected to our controller. So if this leaks gas, it sends it there. This one goes to a remote station downstairs that alarms out. Of course, we have our heat reclaim valve that we talked about a minute ago. But basically, the discharge gas coming from the oil separator goes out, pipes down, and goes to our gas cooler. Once it's gone through our gas cooler, we come back either high pressure vapor, or if the temperature's cool enough outside, we're going to have liquid. But it comes through all these series of piping, and then it comes over here to this valve. Vapor will come through here. This drops the pressure. So during the summertime, if I'm running 1200 pounds of discharge pressure, this is going to drop the pressure down to 500 pounds. And it's that pressure drop that creates our liquid CO2. So as discharge vapor comes through here, this drops the pressure down to 500 pounds. We got a little bit of liquid and we got a little bit of vapor. Comes into our flash tank. The liquid goes to the bottom, the vapor comes to the top. Now, the liquid from the bottom, of course, it's going to come out and it's going to go through a series of piping, and it goes to our header. So this is the vapor coming back, but then we have our liquid back behind there that drops down, and that's the liquid CO2 going through there. Now, it looks like it's a big pipe. It's only a 5/8 pipe going through there. We don't need a whole lot of big pipe when we're talking about CO2. It's so much more efficient than running a 449 system. And then the other side, we have the receiver valve. And this valve does just the opposite that. As pressure gets too high on there, because we want to try to maintain 500 pounds. So as that pressure gets too high, that's going to open up and relieve some of the pressure into the suction of our compressors. Because we're taking the vapor off the top of this and putting it into the suction of our medium temp headers also. And that balances the system out so that we can keep it around 500 pounds. If you notice all these big fat hoses, this is our relief valve header. So all this ties to the system somewhere, and if the pressure gets too high, that relief valve is going to open up and put the pressure into this header, and then that header pipes to the outside so that no one gets hurt here. Because if one of these pop off in here, you're going to know it. I had one at a store, the 1500 started popping off, and there wasn't a relief hose on it. It sounded like a shotgun. It went pow, 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 pow. Scared the hell out of everybody. So they put these hoses on here so they're not suffocating if somebody's in this enclosed space. It's going to vent itself outside. This little contraption here is our UPS. That's our backup battery. So if the power loses, it doesn't lose power to the controller. This store is set up with a full generator, and within 5 minutes the rack will kick back on. But this prevents the controller from losing power, so it can run through its steps to bring the system back up. That's where our rack controller plugs into. It gets its power from that backup battery. Compressors run off of a VFD also. So as the suction pressure increases or decreases, this is going to run that compressor RPM up and down, controlled by a Hertz factor, of course. Now, say we do have a catastrophic power outage. CO2 is going to want to start building up pressure. Now, we really don't want to lose all that CO2 and have to come out here and start adding CO2 in the system. So what they've done is they installed these auxiliary condensers. Auxiliary condenser basically takes vapor from the top of our flash tank and keeps the pressure at a manageable state so that it doesn't relieve itself out in the atmosphere, and then we have to come keep adding gas to it. So another crazy valve that's on this system is what we call the PGC valve. The PGC valve works when you have really cold temperatures outside. And if we look on our pressure, it says gas cooler outlet pressure. So basically, in a nutshell, what can happen, hey, we're way too cold outside to do what we need to do. We're going to open this up. We're going to bypass the gas cooler and go straight to our VREC, our receiver valve. And we're going to send that discharge pressure directly to that valve to do it. That helps keep our head pressure up. Like anything else, we still have to maintain a certain head pressure. These are our suction line filters. This store does not have liquid line filters on it. We do have a liquid line screen that we have to clean so often. We keep spare screens here so that when they clog up, we can replace them. That's all that the liquid has in it. It's mounted way underneath there. It's hard as hell to get to on these mini advancer racks, but every CO2 system is going to have some kind of filter on that. We have these valves all over the place where we can isolate everything that we need. You notice we do have stainless steel caps on these because that's pretty high pressure. These things got to hold 12, 13, 1,400 pounds, so they got to be pretty reliable. But if you notice, everything's got a valve on it. So if I want to work on something, basically there isn't any kind of recovery. What you got to do is valve off the liquid, pump the whole system down, isolate whatever you want to isolate, and you got to blow it off. You just got to let it go, and so you can work on the system, fix whatever you need to fix, pull a vacuum, and then slowly introduce vapor back into whatever you're working on. Because when you're in a vacuum state, if you add liquid to it, you can create dry ice in the system. You don't want that. So you always introduce the vapor back into any CO2 system that you've had to pull a vacuum on. On this CO2 system, because we're using a Danfoss, we have boards up here. This is called the pack controller. That's the heart of running this rack. Now, with the pack controllers, you cannot see anything happening in the pack controller through the system manager. You have to connect the computer up directly to that and use their software in order to get into the system.
All right, everyone, I hope you enjoyed that little short video. This video was basically to show you what it looks like when you're stepping into a transitional, like I said, some people call it transcritical systems, with all these valves and these gas coolers and these different components of there. If you really want to learn and get in depth, you need to learn the enthalpy chart on this stuff. Learning that's going to help you understand so much more. Fairly simple once you get down to the nuts and bolts of it. You got a couple of extra valves that you'll have to learn and learn how they operate and what they do. But other than that, you got your compressor, you got your condenser, you got your metering device, and you have your evaporator. Those, you got to have those in any kind of refrigeration system. This one just has some extra bells and whistles. So I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a comment below if you have any questions. I might be able to answer for you. This stuff is still brand new. Well, to me anyway, but that's the way the system's going. Everybody's going to start using CO2 in the industry and get it away from the synthetic refrigerants. So understand it, learn it, and above all, enjoy it. Have a great day.